1 or 2 minutes. We're going to let the last little stragglers who are trying to log in right now get a chance to log in. And then we will be starting the $1 million take-home pay webinar. So sit tight. It's just going to be maybe 1 more minute. All right, as we wait this last minute for people to finish logging in, if someone could just put a message in the chat there, just let me know that you can hear me and see me, just to make sure that we don't do this whole webinar and no one could actually see me or hear me. So type in there. All right, thank you, David. And I'm curious, I'd love to know where everyone's from. Brandon, how's the pickleball game going? The pickleball court right there, I actually played last night against one of my kids. I always beat my kids, but one of these days, pretty soon, I've got 2 kids that are going to beat me. Anyway, so all good. Perfect. Where's everyone from? Got Minnesota. Thank you, Brandon. Nebraska. Awesome. Tallahassee. Canada. All right. You win the farthest one away here. Janine, good to see you. Or that might be Scott also. Calgary. All right. So got some Canadians here. Excellent. So Austin's in Colorado. I'm actually flying out to Vail, Colorado on Thursday for the Making of retreat with Ashley Hovez and her startup crew. I don't know if any of y'all are going to be there, but that's always a fun, relaxing retreat. So I'll be there. I'll be there Thursday and Friday in Vail, Colorado this week. All right. Well, we've given people a little bit of time to sign on. So now that we've sound checked and video checked and everything, I think it's time to get started here. So let's dive into this topic, kind of the $1 million take-home pay. That is a number that was kind of unachievable in the past. It was just almost unheard of to be in a dentist taking home $1 million. However, over the recent years, I'd say the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a dramatic increase of the owner dentists that are taking home $1 million in their pocket. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. How does that actually happen? How can we reverse engineer and make the decisions we need to make that results in $1 million of take-home pay? And of course, I don't have to say it too often, but if you are able to achieve $1 million in take-home pay as a dentist, as an owner, then that is going to give you a series of opportunities in your career and in your life that you would normally not have. Amount of freedom financially, freedom with time. There's just a lot of things that start falling into place when our take-home pay is well above anything we would ever need. So I'm excited to always talk about this topic. And I talk to dentists every day. I coach dentists almost every day. And most of the people I coach achieve this number. So it's really exciting to kind of take this journey and to have this finish line that says, hey, in this next phase of your career, you're going to take home $1 million. Now, before I dive into all the slides here, I'm going to ask, please, that we hold off on all the questions if we can until the end. And then when we do have the questions in the end, let's use the chat function to kind of type in the questions. All right. But let's, as much as we can, let's try to hold off until the end to give me a chance to kind of get through all the slides and the content and to teach what I'm going to teach. And then we'll ask the questions at the end. All right. So let's talk about this. Let's dive in. $1 million take home pay. There are kind of 3 categories I kind of like to think of when looking at $1 million take home pay. Am I the owner dentist going to do dentistry full-time, or am I going to do it part-time, or am I going to do it no time? And all 3 of these have a specific formula, a specific recipe to achieve $1 million or more take-home pay. So we're going to start with full-time. How do we do it if we're the full-time dentist? And then I'm going to walk you through, okay, well, how can you make $1 million take-home pay just practicing 1 or 2 days a week? And then how are we going to do it not practicing at all? And so let's start with a full-time dentist. How do we take home $1 million? Before I click on the next slide, I want you to think about, okay, if we're going to take home $1 million as the only dentist in a practice working full-time, how much do we need to collect to take home $1 million? If we're the only dentist, how much do we need to collect? Think about that question. Because if you run a larger facility, higher overhead model, you might need to collect $3 million in annual collections to take home $1 million. But if you run a proper overhead model, you are going to be at 50% or less overhead. We strive for 45% overhead. But I'm going to, for the math that we're going to do, we're going to use a 50% overhead model that is assuming one dentist in a modest size practice working full time. So if we're going to take home $1 million in that kind of model, we need $2 million of collections. Now, $2 million of collections. And let's assume we're going to work 48 weeks in a year. So this might be a phase of our career where we're like, you know what? I want to work. I'm willing to work 5 days a week. Maybe they're not 8-hour days. Maybe they're like 6-hour days. Maybe I'm working, 8 to 2 without a lunch, but I'm going to work 5 days a week. I'm here to work. I'm young enough in my career. I want to pay down debt. I want to build wealth. I want to be financially free. I want to support my family and grow. And I'm willing to work. All right. That's the phase we're in. And in that situation, maybe for easy math here, we're going to work about 48 weeks a year. We're going to work 5 days a week, whether they're partial days or full days. We're going to call it 5 days a week, and we're going to collect $2 million a year. All right. Well, how realistic is that? How realistic is it to collect $2 million a year with just one dentist? Well, let's do the math. What we're going to find is that in order to collect $2 million in 1 year, we're going to need about $5,500 of production a day from the doctor and $2,800 from hygiene. Now, is that possible? Can we do it? Well, let's focus on hygiene first. How do we collect $2,800 a day from hygiene? What we're going to do is, I'm going to go forward one slide to show you, we are going to have a 5-operatory practice in this example. This is our typical setup, 5 ops. By the way, our typical setup of 5 ops, if it were a startup, achieves the $2 million a year collections within the first 3 years open from scratch. So a startup of only 5 ops following our startup model will get to this number, 2 million, with one dentist within the first 3 years open from scratch. But whether I'm doing a startup or not, let's just look at this math. In this example, I've got 5 ops. Why is 5 ops better than 8 or 10? Because I'm running a lower overhead model. I'm having a smaller team, less people to manage at once, a smaller volume of patients coming through the door in my 5 ops compared to if I had a full-blown 8 or 9 op practice. So we are running a model that says, like, we've got modest size, we've got modest costs. Can we achieve healthy production and collections with modest costs? And life is a little more simple when we have modest size, modest patient flow, a medium-sized team to manage. Life is a little more simple than compared to, the chaos that can happen when we have a big practice. So 5 ops, as you can see, we've got 3 ops dedicated to hygiene, 2 ops dedicated to the doctor. And if we were looking at those 3 ops of hygiene, you'll notice that those 3 ops, ops 1 and 2 are covered by just one hygienist who is assisted. And op 3 is an unassisted hygienist. So another way of saying this is I've got 2 hygienists in 3 ops. So now I'm going to go back a slide. We need $2,800 a day in hygiene. Is that realistic? Is that possible? Now, for those of you that don't track this or know this, an average hygienist who's not advanced with anything really, just kind of processing patients with prophies every now and then scaling, not trying, a typical hygienist that's just mediocre production-wise at best is doing about $900 a day in production. And that's in a single column. And if they were assisted, they're doing almost double that. That is mediocre hygienist with no training, no kind of accountability, no incentives. I would say that's kind of the baseline of what you're going to get no matter who you hire and no matter what kind of practice you are. That is like the lowest end. So $2,800 a day covering 3 ops, that's about $900 to $950 a day per op. So what I'm saying is that we might have one hygienist who's unassisted do 1,000 a day. Let's go to that. Op 3 might be, 1,000 a day, which is within, average, is very easy to achieve. And then ops 1 and 2, that hygienist might be at 1,800 a day. And that is also incredibly easy to achieve. I can tell you that I've owned a whole lot of practices in my career, whole lot of practices. I've helped build hundreds of practices. And when you look at my hygienist, it is common that I had hygienists, just one hygienist producing more than $2,000 a day, every day. So to ask 2 hygienists to do $2,800 a day are very achievable numbers. I'm describing this in detail because I don't want us to think that we have to have super hygienists and a super dentist with a super office to doing super dentistry in a super demographic location. We don't. I'm showing you modest production numbers coming from hygiene, $2,800 a day. All right. Now, how do we get to $5,500 a day in doctor? Well, I'm sure nearly everyone on this call has experienced a $5,500 a day. The lazy way of getting to $5,500 in a day is to start an Invisalign case, right? Or to do a surgical case, do sleep apnea therapy, kind of do one big chunky case, a $5,500 case. Do one case, you're already there. That's the lazy way. That's a great way. Let's do the lazy way if we can, which means in our career, we must thoughtfully, with focus, learn how to do those types of procedures. So we must thoughtfully go after maybe surgical procedures, or maybe aligner therapy, or maybe bracketed ortho. We must be thoughtful about that. Can we do cosmetic procedures? As we mature in our career, instead of spending a whole bunch of money on occlusal continuums and learning how to use the newest bonding agent, let's learn these chunky procedures that will allow us to expand our menu and have more of these $5,500 days where we don't have to see that many patients. Now, if we don't know how to do those types of procedures, that's fine too. How can we do $5,500 a day on regular dentistry? That's probably like 2 or 3 crowns and a handful of fillings and all the other miscellaneous things we do. 2 or 3 crowns and a handful of fillings, we're not talking about a crazy day, especially if we're able to have healthy fee levels. It's not mandatory. We can hit $5,500 a day being in network with most PPO plans. But as you know, if we're out of network with some of those or out of network with all of those, our fees are higher and it's even easier. It's even more lazy to get to the $5,500 a day mark. If I told you that your entire family's financial future freedom depended on you achieving $5,500 a day, if you really took that seriously, you would be able to structure your day and make the decisions in your career to hit that number, because that is not a crazy hard number to hit. That is a very achievable number to hit. But that means our team must be trained to non-negotiably fill the doctor's schedule to that number. Every day, let's consistently have that number. It's an expectation. It's a non-negotiable expectation. So what do we do then if we have a schedule and we don't have that number on the schedule? That should trigger the team that should activate them into new tasks. So if we are below goal for the day, let's not finish processing all the EOBs and resubmitting the claims. Let's procrastinate that a day and instead attack all the unscheduled treatment, look at all the patients on the schedule today, see if we could schedule more treatment for them, activate our dentists to try to convert same-day dentistry, activate our hygienists to try to convert same-day dentistry on the hygiene schedule and the doctor's schedule. We are activated to achieve our goal. And on days where we've already achieved it, let's move the rest of the dentistry that's trying to hit that day on the next day and the next day. Let's make our schedule easy and consistent. 5,500 a day to start. Okay. So this is very achievable to have 5,500 a day on the doctor's side, 2,800 a day on the hygiene side. If you do that 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year, you're at 2 million collections. All right. Well, with this practice setup, how many employees do we have? What kind of team are we talking about here? We have one dentist, 2 hygienists. They're working out of 3 columns. And then there's 3 total assistants, 2 for the doctor, but 1 for the hygienist. And then we've got 2 front office staff, and we are probably utilizing 1 virtual employee. That virtual employee is going to be handling things like insurance verifications and confirmations. But in between those insurance tasks, they're going to answer our missed calls. So when the practice misses a call, we've got someone else on the bench virtually that's going to be able to save that call. And in between those calls, they're doing other things like verifying insurance. That is our peak capacity, kind of full throttle staff. 2 hygienists, 3 assistants, 2 admin staff on site. That's 7 people on site besides the dentist, and then 1 virtual person. 7 on site is a very manageable number. And let me tell you, when you're taking home $1 million, you will be paying those 7 people the top of the area pay. They will make more money with you than in other practices, because once you're taking home $1 million, you are happily, maybe even overpaying these key team members that got you to this spot, because you are now investing in maintaining it and having consistency. And so these employees, these 7 on site, are going to be making more money in your practice than in other practices. And it's very easy to manage a team that size compared to bigger practices. So this is what a profit and loss statement for a practice like this looks like. We can see on this profit and loss statement, it says in bold at the top left, it says gross profit, $2 million. What that means, if I use dentite speak, that means that we are collecting $2 million for the year, a little bit more than 2 million. Below that, you can see it says operating expenses. Now, the operating expenses are broken up into different categories. So the first category says personnel, that's staff costs. And we can see it totals a little over 500 grand. That is right at 25%. That is not a coincidence that it's right at 25%. That is paying the team and creating a bonus plan that will fix our staff costs at 25%. So that should be the consistent number we hit in this model, 25%. Then we look at doctor wages, which we should not look, a little bit ignore right now, because that's just what that doctor chose to pay themselves. If we go below that on category 3, production, we can see that's where supply and lab costs are. And you can see supplies need to be, dental and office supplies combined need to be below 4%. And lab fees would for sure need to be below 5%, but we try to get them below 4%. And we can see category 4, facility, that's where you find rent and utilities. And then category 5, general and admin, that's where you find all the other miscellaneous stuff. And when it's all said and done, let's look at the top left-hand corner of this slide. We can see for the accountants in the room, EBITDA is at 29.8%. That's a very high percentage of EBITDA. The take-home pay is right above $1 million. But then we've got in that kind of dark gold color, it says normalized take-home pay. Normalized, what we do for that is, some practices pay for their personal vehicle through the practice. They pay their son who doesn't actually work there. They buy their, home supplies through the office, and they, go on vacation, and they list it under CE and travel. And they're basically like using their company to make personal expenses for the tax write-offs. We add all that stuff back, all those charitable contributions and travel and meals and entertainment and auto and all of that, to normalize your take-home pay, because that's actually part of your take-home pay. And so normalized take-home pay is what we look at to compare all practices against each other. And in this example, you can see we've got 1.07 million normalized take-home pay, which means 53% is take-home pay, 47% overhead. This is a 5-op practice with the makeup and the type of schedule I have just now described to you. This is the way it looks. So it might be surprising, because maybe before this webinar, a lot of you thought $1 million take-home pay came from a big practice, or it came from doing all on X cases, full arch cases, or it came from big cosmetic procedures, or maybe you had to be fee for service, or, you got to have a super dentist. No. High take-home pay comes from modest costs with strong collections. And if we can get disciplined at how much to collect a day and choose a lower cost model, we have high take-home pay. Just like you might be disciplined in working out every day, or what you eat every day, or your kind of time off every week or every month, the hours you work, the hours you play, how you run your household. There's these disciplined moments in your life. If we make how much you schedule per day a disciplined moment that is implemented successfully, and we layer that on top of a lower overhead model, this is the result. And it's not a practice that's huge. So again, how can we get to 5,500 doctor and 2,800 hygiene? On the doctor side, let's do occasional big cases and supplement it with normal dentistry. I'm not talking about huge cases like full arch. I'm just talking about okay, we do an Invisalign every now and then. And we just make sure that that's what we schedule to every day. And when we've scheduled 5,500 for next Tuesday, let's put the rest of the dentistry in next Wednesday and next Thursday. We hit goal on Tuesday. Let's move it, the next stuff, to Wednesday and Thursday, so that every day becomes consistent. It feels the same. It's manageable. The expectations are there. It's not a roller coaster. 2,800 hygiene, simple to do with regular hygienists, one assisted and one not. So 2 hygienists working out of 3 columns. And how do we keep our overhead below 50%? Well, we have to manage the supply spend budget with focus. We have to be very deliberate to make sure that we're never ordering more than 4% in any given month of our collections on supplies. We have to make smart decisions about what labs we're going to use and when we're going to use more expensive cases versus not. But mostly, having overhead like that comes from having a smaller team that is still producing well. And a smaller team that produces well means that we've got healthy diagnosis and healthy case acceptance. If we have the same team, but we diagnose more dentistry and more people say yes, we produce and collect more with the same receptionist, with the same treatment coordinator, with the same hygienist and the same dental assistant. And if our schedule gets too full, let's not bring on an associate right off the bat. Maybe instead, we'll drop some plans and have higher fees and expand our profit margin even more. But leave the patient flow to be modest. Leave the team a modest size. Leave my costs to be a modest amount. Those of you that are struggling with high overhead, chances are you've got a larger facility that might be part of the problem, but also you're likely struggling with a lack of diagnosis and case acceptance. So in essence, your staff costs look high, but the reality is you still need those people to answer the phone and to present finances and to suck spit and to scale teeth. And so the problem lies in the fact that you're not producing and collecting enough to justify that baseline level of people you need. And if that's happening in a larger facility with larger costs, then you end up in the situation where you're only taking home like 30% or 35% of your collections. Some of you are nowhere near collecting $2 million a year off of one dentist. And that is due to probably a series of decisions that I might not agree with when it comes to how you manage your practice. So advanced practice management will show you dozens of ways to increase your production and collections in a very ethical manner that does not like make you burn out or work harder. Collecting more does not mean doing the same thing faster. Collecting more means changing how you manage the practice. All right, well, let's keep on going here. I don't want to get off on tangent. There's so much we could say about practice management. So even in our startup practices, we hit this $2 million collections number and take home $1 million. And these are usually dentists that are really early on in their careers. So they have not matured with their case acceptance yet. They have not matured with their clinical skills yet. They're still in a journey of fast learning. And even though they're not at their prime yet, they still achieve the $2 million mark with $1 million take-home pay in a startup. And the great thing about startups is that they're beautiful and ideal locations, brand new equipment, team you chose, technology you want. I did a whole webinar on that last week, but the startup, we're trying to get the startup dentist to this $1 million take-home pay mark within the first 3 years. Here's another example of these two dentists that I coach, and they're a rural practice, two dentists, two partners. And they're on track now in 2024 to take home $1 million each, $2 million as an office, off of you can see this, the 3.8 million in collections. So the overhead number has just plummeted because they did a merger. So here is something completely different from a startup. This is a rural existing practice that had space. They bought a smaller, struggling practice with an older patient base, an older dentist, and merged it into their existing space and dramatically increased their take-home pay. There's a lot of different ways to get to this $1 million number as a full-time dentist. Now, we've talked about full-time. What about part-time? You know what? Before I dive into part-time, let me sum up full-time a little bit better for you. And I hope this is valuable to you, kind of stopping and going through these details. But if we're a solo full-time dentist in a practice we own, we need a low overhead model. Maybe we already have it, or maybe we don't. Maybe we need to have a strong look at our expenses and make disruptive decisions to reset those expenses to be a low overhead. Okay, reset how we spend our money. But we need a low overhead model, because the lower overhead we have, the easier it is to achieve $1 million take-home pay. So we need a lower overhead model. And a lot of us need to get through a reset of those decisions. All right. Now, if we can get to a 50% overhead model, which is very doable, then we need 2 million in collections. All right, 2 million in collections. We're going to get there a way that is sustainable. We're not going to get there by sprinting and racing and bleeding at the knuckles, white knuckling everything, like trying to like squeeze people in and go faster, faster, faster. No, we're not going to do the crazy thing more. We are going to do something less crazy. We're going to get to 2 million in collections first by having a thoughtful goal per day that is non-negotiable. And if we achieve goal, great. If we don't achieve goal, we all know we need to stretch a little bit that day to achieve the goal. And the goal is very achievable because we just need modest hygiene production with the 3-op setup. And we need reasonable doctor production. 2 ops, 1 doctor, 5,500 a day. If we're not achieving 5,500 a day today, it's not because you can't. It's because maybe you don't have the case acceptance you need yet. You haven't learned how to do that. Or maybe you're not diagnosing enough yet. Or maybe you need to learn how to do more types of procedures. Maybe you just have the wrong team Maybe they're not presenting finances the proper way, or you don't have good payment options. Maybe it's not even a practice you own right now that you're working in. It's going to be harder to achieve good numbers in a practice that doesn't represent you, with the employees that you want to work with, doing things that you believe in. But the vast majority of us that own a practice can definitely get to $5,500 a day number if we are focused on it. If we don't know how to do it, you need to learn how. But once you learn how, you will see it's not difficult. It's just being thoughtful about the decisions you make. Okay. Once we achieve $5,500 a day on the doctor, $2,800 a day in hygiene, we get to $2 million a year in collections, and we take home half. And I showed you what the profit and loss statement looks like. Staff costs at 25%, supply costs less than 4%, lab costs less than 5%, maybe less than 4%. Our take home amount is 50% or more. All right, that's working full-time dentist. Now, what about what's on the slide here? What about a part-time dentist? How do we take home $1 million as a part-time dentist? Well, one way is to have associates, but we, the owner, are going to scale back to maybe 1 or 2 days a week. That's what I'm going to describe to you. We're going to have associates. So let's say we have enough associates that we have $2 million in collections per year. That might be 2 or 3 associates, plus all the hygienists to go along with that too, right? That could be a 5-op practice, open 7 to 7. It could be, actually, one of my coaching clients has a 5-op practice, open 7 days a week. It could be a 7-op practice, open, a little bit expanded hours. It could be a 10-op practice that isn't open expanded hours at all. Obviously, the less ops you have, the lower your overhead is going to be. The less staff you're managing at any given moment. So having smaller facilities with expanded hours does have business advantages, but you could also do this, of course, in a larger facility. So let's say you've got a practice, or maybe 2 practices, or maybe 3, and your associates collectively are, your practices collectively, you're bringing in $2 million in collections per year, and your profit margin on that is maybe a modest 15%, like I'm showing you here. So without you picking up a handpiece at all, your organization collects $2 million, and $300,000 of that every year goes into your pocket as the owner. All right. Now, where does the rest come? Because I want you to take home $1 million. So how do we get to $700,000 take home pay that's missing still? What I want to do is I want to build what I've termed this virtual specialty practice. What I want you to do as an owner is focus on just high dollar procedures. Let's say that's placing implants and doing aligner therapy. I'm just making something up. I want you to only work 1 or 2 days a week placing implants and doing aligner therapy for your entire collective patient base. But we're not going to add ops. We're not going to add a location. We're not going to add front desk employees. We're not going to add any staff. We're not going to add rent. We're not going to add utilities. What we're going to do is we're going to take the open chair time in your organization, those crevices that are open in your schedule, and we are going to give that open chair time to you. We've already paid the rent for that chair time. We already have the staff for that chair time. We already have the loan payment, utilities, the security, everything, software costs, marketing costs already there. You see, your associate's dentistry has paid all of the bills for your organization already. Now we're going to bring your dentistry in, and your dentistry does not have any added costs other than the materials cost. So when you do dentistry in this chair, you've already got the rent paid for that chair. You've got everything already paid for. The only additional cost you now bring into the organization by doing that dentistry are lab and supplies. And when we look at lab and supplies, it's going to come out to about 10%, which means your overhead in your virtual practice is only 10%. Your take-home pay is 90% from the dentistry you do with your 2 hands. So if you are able to produce $800,000 a year doing implants and ortho, you're going to take home about 700 grand of that. This is how I, as a second-year dentist from a wheelchair, took home $1.3 million doing ortho part-time. Because I had in my practices, all the bills were already paid. I already had profit coming in from the associates dentistry. And when I added my dentistry, the added costs were tiny and the added collections were huge, which means all of that went into my pocket. Now, let's be very realistic with this for a bit. Is it possible to produce 800 grand working part-time? Well, 800 grand working part-time, if we divide that by 12 months, that's 66,000 a month. If we divide that by, let's just say 2 days a week for 4 weeks, we're looking at producing 8,300 a day. If all we do are implants and ortho, can we produce 8,300 a day? I would say a huge yes to that question, because every case we do is like a $6,000 and up case. We probably only need 1 or 2 patients a day to hit 8,300 when those are the types of cases we do. So let's just say that's 3 patients a week. That's 12 patients a month. Can you find 12 patients a month that will say yes to implants and ortho? Well, what if you knew how to do even more than that? What if you knew how to do implants and ortho, clear aligners and bracketed ortho? Or what if you knew how to do sleep apnea therapy? Or what if you knew how to do laser procedures? Like, the more you learn of those types of cases, the faster and easier it is for you to generate the numbers you want to generate on just 1 or 2 days a week. Another way of saying it is, the more bigger cases you know in this particular model, the smaller your organization has to be for you to still do 800 grand a year working 1 or 2 days a week, because you have got a bigger menu of bigger cases. So if this is the model you want to do, then you would proactively learn these cases. You would have to have a consistent referral stream of these cases going to you. So how can we get associate dentists referring us the implants and the ortho? That is something that we'd have to have systemized. The way I teach doing it is I don't leave it up to the associate. So we have our hygienists take the patients through a questionnaire. And if the question is answered yes, it triggers a mandatory consultation appointment with the owner. So, for example, ortho, if the patient is aged 10 to 15 and has crooked teeth, it's a mandatory ortho consultation with the owner. If the patient is missing a tooth, it's a mandatory implant consultation with the owner. It's automatically treatment planned and scheduled. I'm not relying on an associate to think about it and to put it in the treatment plan. I am systemizing my team, going through questions and putting it into the treatment plan so that all of those patients are going to the owner that does these cases. How many locations do you need? How many associates do you need? The less big cases you know how to do, the more associates you need, the bigger the patient base you need to achieve this. The more big cases you know how to do, the less associates you need, the less locations you need. But in essence, what we really need is we need our practice's overhead paid for by the associate with some leftover profit. And then we need enough patients to say yes to the bigger cases for us personally to achieve our number on just 1 or 2 days a week. Imagine you took the next 2 years to expand the number of cases you know how to do like this and to engineer this result I just said. From that point forward, you are working just a couple days a week. But also remember this, you're not having to cover any hygiene exams. You are free from the exam chair. All you're doing are consultations and treatment. When you don't have to cover hygiene, you can take vacation whenever you want. You can take off a month, a week, you can take off here or there or anywhere. You are not, your company will still operate without you. you are not having to reschedule the entire hygiene side of your practice or find some fill-in dentist because you're not covering any of the hygiene. All of your associates are getting all of those exams for their schedule. You are getting consultations and you can take a break from your schedule whenever you want. And you're taking home $1 million. Or maybe you're taking home 1.4. Or maybe you're only taking home 750. I don't know, but it's 1 or 2 days a week when you do it this way. Notice the significant differences between this way and looking at what other dentists do. What other dentists do is they're doing general dentistry and then they add an associate. And now both of them are doing general dentistry. And then they add another associate and they're still working full-time doing general dentistry. And they're still covering the hygiene chair. They're not on this very narrow path that says we are going to unlock ourselves from the hygiene chair and focus strictly on big cases and make our referral stream solid and systemized. Nope, they're just doing the same old thing, but now they're having to manage another dentist too. And they're having to somehow figure out how to share all the exams, and they got to replace that dentist every now and then. And that is a hard way to have associates. A much more intelligent way, I think, for a lot of us is to unlock ourselves from the hygiene chair and to do it in this very strategic way. Now, there's some practice management stuff you got to know, because the better you are at practice management, the more easily this comes to you to fall into this kind of box that I'm describing. Of course, if you are not trained up on practice management, if you don't have the latest skills and haven't developed your ability to implement and maintain those things, it's going to be harder to get the 2 million in collections as a solo dentist, or, to get this part-time specialty practice going. These are the national averages. And this is a sad set of averages. For every 100 new patient calls, only 68 are answered. And of those 68, only 29 appointments occur. We could have had 100 appointments, but we only got 29. And of the 29 patients that come for exams, only 16 of those 29 got a diagnosis. The other patients, we just said, looks good, see you again in 6 months. I don't think that's high enough. 55% getting a diagnosis. We know how to fix things, we know how to prevent things, and we know how to do. Sorry, my computer froze there. So what I was saying is we know how to fix things, we know how to prevent things, and we know how to do elective things. And I think that if we consider all that a lot more than 55% of exams should result in some sort of diagnosis. All right. And then of the people we diagnose, the national average treatment plan size is actually only $1,600. And we only schedule 34% of that. So another way of saying it is we schedule $8,700 for every 100 new patient phone calls. Those are the national averages of 2023. Now, what I'm about to show you is something different. I'm about to show you what would happen if you were magically a top performer in every single one of those categories. And by the way, that's not realistic. No one's a top performer at everything. But it's important to know where we would land if we were, because that gives us the ceiling. What is the ceiling we have here in dentistry? And here it is. Top performers of each category. A 95% answered rate. We've got something like a 81% or so, 85% conversion rate. We diagnose this. You can see that out of 100 new patient calls, we're getting 77 patients, not 29. We're getting 58 diagnosed, not 16. We are presenting 145 grand as a top performer, not 25,000. We end up with 80 grand on the schedule, not 8. So another way of saying this is the national average practice has the theoretical ability to be 10 times bigger than it is. Now, it's theoretical because, like I said, no one's a top performer at everything. But a whole lot of people are in the top 10% of 3 or 4 of these categories. So maybe they're not scheduling 80 grand. Maybe they're scheduling 50 or 40 or 30. And even 30 grand is way more than 8. Even 30 grand is 3.5 times more than the national average. So that national average that's just doing 600 grand in collections a year should be doing 2 million if it just became a top performer in a few things. This is what some of you actually need to learn how to do next. Learning how to take home $1 million might be one step too far for you, because what you haven't learned how to do yet is become a top performer in some of these things. So your practice management side hasn't fully matured yet. And that's maybe where your focus needs to be. Because when this is healthy, a whole lot more dentistry naturally falls into your schedule, which gives you the power to have a lot more choices about how you run your practice and how you run your life, basically. So this might be where some of you need to focus. Okay. So I've gone through two ways right now, two models of $1 million, a full-time solo dentist or this virtual specialty practice where the owner is a part-time dentist. Now let's talk about the third model, the no-time model. The owner does not pick up a handpiece or a scalpel. We do not do any dentistry. Oh, actually, you know what? Hold off. Pause that thought for a second. Let me go back one. This part-time model. This is what I would do today if I were a specialist. If I were a periodontist, for example, I would own 2 or 3 practices that are profitable without my perio. So I'm already making money there. And then my perio practice would be virtual with only 10% overhead, only doing it 1 or 2 days a week. I'd make more money that way than a periodontist in town with a perio practice that's working full time, running an overhead of 55 or 60%. I would make more money working half the amount of time because I would have this virtual practice, 10% overhead plus profitability from my multiple locations or my multiple associates. So if you're a specialist listening to this, I'm not telling you all of you should do this, but I'm sure that some of you are like, wow, I'm entrepreneurial and I'm open-minded enough, and I can now logically see how that is better for me because I'm owning the referral stream. I'm not relying on general dentists to refer me cases. The minute that dentist learns how to do it themselves, they refer less cases. The minute they sell their practice to the DSO, all those referrals go away. Or they sell to another dentist that can place implants, a whole lot of those cases go away. So if I'm a periodontist, I'm owning my referral basis, and I'm now able to have a perio practice that's kind of this virtual model with only 10% overhead. That is a great model for a specialist. All right, so let's go to the no time model now. The third one, I don't perform any dentistry. All right, now we're getting into kind of DSO level management and ratios and profit and loss statements, and this is what to expect. If we want $1 million of EBITDA, because this is a webinar about $1 million take home, if we want $1 million in EBITDA, an 18% margin for an associate-driven small organization, small DSO, is achievable. It's not too high. It's not unreasonably low either. It's right there, very achievable, 18% margin. That means that our organization needs to have $5.5 million in collections if we're running an 18% margin to have $1 million in EBITDA. So I need enough dentists and hygienists, in either one location or many locations, and it all needs to add up to about $5.5 million in collections with an 18% EBITDA margin, meaning my overhead is 82%. Because I'm having to pay dentists. I'm not paying, I'm not an owner operator dentist. I'm not picking up the handpiece. I have to employ dentists. My overhead is 82%. My EBITDA margin is 18. If I'm $5.5 million collections, I've got that $1 million take home pay. $5.5 million collections is probably 6 dentists. And these are with modest numbers. 6 dentists and 9 hygienists. Let's think about this for a second. That means that each doctor is doing about $50,000 a month in production, and each hygienist is doing about $875 a day. You already know $875 a day for hygiene is like every hygienist can do that. It's not even trying that much. $50,000 a month per doctor is also very doable. You're going to have some doctors do less than that, and you're going to have plenty of doctors do more than that. We need the average to be about $50,000 across our organization. If we can achieve these modest numbers and manage our expenses properly, we'll have $1 million without picking up a handpiece. And I always like to run practice models based on modest numbers. So if you currently have associates or multiple locations, but you have to have high producing associates to make this profitable, you have a pretty challenging model. If you can have a model that doesn't require a lot of skill and production from your associates, obviously it's an easier model to maintain. So the key with that is having the practice systems results in a lot of patient flow and case acceptance, no matter who the dentist is. So that's how you manage the practice, the operations, what the day-to-day. No matter who the dentist is, there's strong patient flow and there's strong case acceptance. And then you've got to be focused on managing your expenses well. That doesn't mean being cheap. It just means you are auditing your expenses constantly, making sure you're not making any mistakes when it comes to expenses. If you can manage your expenses well, and you can have strong systems for patient flow and case acceptance, then modest producing dentists and mediocre producing hygienists will get you to $1 million take home pay if you can achieve $5.5 million in collections. And of course, after you achieve this, by the way, you'll realize that you're not even working full time managing this, and you'll probably want to do this again and again. You'll probably want to go more than this. A lot of us get sucked into the drug of success. Once we achieve success, maybe many of us shouldn't keep trying to grow, but many people do. This is a very easy kind of life or career where we're not doing any dentistry and we're just making sure that we're maintaining our costs down and that we're maintaining good patient flow and case acceptance. I say that's easy. However, there's plenty of dental CEOs that are too absentee in their managing of the practice, and they have not implemented fully the systems it takes to get good case acceptance. And so they're struggling to hit these numbers. So I don't want to act like these numbers are numbers anyone can achieve. I just want you to know they're very achievable, but there's commonly people not achieving these common numbers. So, you have to be a CEO at this level. You have to understand how to manage things that result in these numbers. And you have to be able to implement things and have it stick. So this is not for the dentist that says, I'm tired of doing dentistry. I feel burnout. I just kind of want to take time off and not manage much. And I'm just going to have associates. No. This is a hands-on act of managing. It's not going to be a full-time job, but it's a job still. You're actively managing this to achieve these numbers, and you'll have $1 million take-home pay if you follow this model. This is what your expenses will look like. You'll have your staff costs at 28%. They're going to be higher than the solo owner dentist because the solo owner dentist produces more with the same team than an associate does. So your staff cost ratio is going to be higher at 28%. You can see supplies, we still want under 4, lab, we're still looking at 5. And when it's all said and done, we've got 18% EBITDA, but we've also got this 4% management fee. That is where you might have to have an HR director. You might have to have a fractional CFO. You might have to have an added corporate layer that a solo office doesn't have to have. So you're going to have added costs if you have enough locations that are new costs to you. Where back in the old days when you only had 1 or 2 locations, you didn't need a CFO, you didn't need an HR director. Your office manager just did that and you just did this. But once you get large enough, you're going to start having added kind of middle level or corporate layer costs. And that's where that management fee is. And so even after having those costs there, the management fees, we're going to end up with 18% EBITDA or $1 million take-home pay. Here is a profit and loss statement of an organization like that. So you can see this organization is collectively collecting $5.88 million per year. Their staff costs are right above 28%. If we go all the way down to the bottom left under production, you can see lab fees are at 4.5%. You can see Dental and office supplies are at 3.9. So this is a very well-run organization. This is discipline. We can see at the very bottom right-hand corner, our EBITDA in dark gold is 1.06 million, which is an 18.1% margin. This is the type of practice setup that we are trying to achieve as I describe this model to you. This is that kind of ideal size to hit that $1 million level. But we don't stop growing. Like, we still want to grow above this. We still want to perfect things. We might want to add another location, or, we might be in that entrepreneurial mode of like, let's not stop here, but let's keep having more success. But honestly, a lot of us shouldn't do that. A lot of us, once we get to $1 million take home pay, a lot of us need to get healthy. A lot of us need to strengthen our relationships with our significant other or with our children. A lot of us need to find new passions. We don't want to get stuck in just the rat race of business and dentistry and let our life be compromised. So, for me, I coach a lot of people. There's definitely a group that is highly driven entrepreneurs that are able to be healthy and able to have healthy relationships and still able to just kill it on the business side and get to 2 million, 3 million take home pay, build an organization, build something big enough to sell for $15, $20 million someday and like play that game. There's definitely a group of people doing that the right way in a healthy way. But there's a lot of people that should maybe get to a point of $1 million take home pay and let that ride, cash in those chips for now, let that become a lifestyle practice. And with that $1 million take home pay, let's go selfishly correct non-dental aspects of our life. Can we only work 1 or 2 days a week so that we have the time to get healthy or to better our relationships or to find a new passion or to give back to our community or to help a family member in need or start a new company but not put our current company at risk? Maybe that's a really good path for some of us. Maybe it makes sense to get to $1 million take home pay and take 3 or 4 years off from growth, off from chaos. So maybe we're not like walking away from being an entrepreneur, but maybe once we get to that $1 million take home pay, we're letting that ride for 3 or 4 years until we go back and try to grow something bigger again. But we go through another phase of our life that says, you know what, my kids are almost out of the house and I want to spend time with them at the end. Maybe that's the focus. Right? So, of course, there's so many personalities on this webinar. Some of you want something huge. Some of you are still in school. You don't even quite know what you think you want, and you're scared to even make a commitment anywhere. A lot of us are somewhere in the middle, and I hope that aspects of this are speaking to you. So we're almost time for questions. Let me go through a couple more things. Okay, so first, taking home $1 million. If we're full-time, we can do it with modest costs, control our costs, and get to $5,500 a day production on the doctor, $2,800 hygiene. Let's run our practice to achieve that number every single day. And that can be done the easy way or can be done the less easy way, depending on how many bigger types of cases we know how to perform. But that's very doable. And my gosh, if you fail and you only get $850,000 take home pay, you still won. But $1 million take home pay, $2 million practice, 50% overhead, very doable, especially if you understand the principles of practice management. Now, from there, maybe you go to part-time. You're like, I'm taking home $1 million full-time. I'd like to be part-time. So you expand your practice with some associates, and with their dentistry alone, your bills are paid. There's going to be some leftover profit. And now you come in 1 or 2 days a week with bigger cases. And now you've got this virtual practice set up. Your dentistry has a very high take-home pay margin. And you are bringing home $1 million take-home pay just working 1 or 2 days a week clinically. And then from there, maybe you say, you know what? I don't even want to work 1 or 2 days a week clinically. Now I'm ready to not pick up the scalpel or the handpiece ever again. And so maybe I'm having back problems, or, I've just decided I want something new in my life. And so now you're going to build an organization that gets to 5.5 million collections or more. It's probably 6 associates, can be multiple locations. And you are going to be good enough at practice management that your patient flow and case acceptance is healthy, and you are going to be focused on healthy decisions around your expenses. And when you can just, in a simplistic way, achieve those things, then you achieve the $1 million take-home pay. Of course, you're going to be managing people. You're going to be replacing dentists. There's going to be day-to-day stuff you have to do. So it is a hands-on job still. It's just not a job that's full-time and you don't have to pick up a handpiece. Those are the three ways. In my opinion, the most responsible thing to do is to go in that linear path. Make $1 million now, then cut back time making $1 million, and then cut back all time making $1 million, but always make $1 million, as opposed to trying to skip to the end. I'm losing money now. I'm struggling. We're not making $1 million, but I'm trying to do this thing where I open and own lots of locations because someday I don't want to do dentistry. No, how about we just make today successful and then we'll go and make tomorrow successful. Let's not delay success. All right. So couple slides and then I'll turn over to questions. My opinion is you need to start your next chapter of wealth. Like if the next 3 years were a chapter, what are you going to title it? I hope you're not going to title it doing the same old thing. I hope you're not going to title it making the same old money in the same mediocre situation, having the same struggles. To make more money and to take away stress, you have to do things completely differently. And so you might need a complete reset on practice management. You might need a complete reset on how you manage your expenses so that you don't end up at the end of the month wondering, where did all the money go? So start that chapter. Bet on yourself. Reset things now. Let someone on this call, the universe is talking to you right now. The situation you're in is not where you want to stay for the next 3 years. So reset what you're doing. It can be done and it doesn't have to hurt. It just needs focus. It just needs to be updated and tweaked and changed so that you can now be on a correct path of making money. You've all heard of stories of people that were struggling and then suddenly they started making a lot of money. They're having a hard time taking home much, and then suddenly they made a few changes and now they're killing it. You've all heard of those stories because those are all people that had this reset moment. Someone on this call is ready for that moment and you know it. So don't let this feeling you have go to waste. Act on this feeling and reset. Get a new focus in your practice. All right. Almost ready for some questions. You can go ahead and start typing them in if you want. But I do want to tell you before we turn it over to questions and before I eventually go, there's a couple things I need to say. So if you are wanting to learn from me or wanting my personal help one-on-one with you, that's available to you. And I just want you to know what the next steps are. For those of you on this call that are interested in learning from me, we have a practice management mastery seminar that's 2 days, very intense, a ton of content. A lot of you on this call have already been to one of my seminars. If actually, you know what, I'm curious. If you've been to one of my seminars, can you type something right now and let me know if you've been? I'm just curious how many people have been. If you're at a keyboard, try to type something. I know some of you on your phones, it'll be difficult. But if you go to the practice management mastery seminar, it's very intense and you will learn the practice management side of how to kind of reset. So yeah, a whole lot of people have said yes, gone to 2 seminars. Some of the older events I used to give for another company. All right, so those of y'all that are interested in learning from me or me helping you one-on-one, you would attend that seminar. And it will probably be the most intense business training you've ever had in your dental career in a short amount of time. And you'll walk out of the seminar with a whole new way of looking at everything. If you've been to one of my events and you already understand how to do it and you've had a difficult time implementing things and you want me to coach you one-on-one, I do that. I don't take a lot of clients on. I typically have 2 or 3 openings in a given moment, but I can do that for you. I can be on your team and you and I can talk Zoom to Zoom on a very regular basis as I coach you through, and I could also train your team for you. All of that is available to you. You just have to ask us if you want more information on that. All right. So here's an offer to you. if you know you want to come to one of my next event, for being on this webinar and hearing me out and learning, if you've decided you do want to come, there's this very short-term discount code that you can use that will take 1/4 of the cost off of our events. That will probably pay for your flight and hotel. So if you've decided you want to come see me and learn from me in person through this very intense kind of boot camp style format of practice management, that's the course to go to, the Practice Management Mastery. There's a code. You'll save 1/4 of the cost. It's significant. And that expires at the end of tonight. Okay. So those are my slides. I'm now going to go into some questions. So first question I see up here, and I'm going to stay for some of the questions, but I can also have, by the way, yeah, let me back up for a second. If I don't get to your question, or if you think of a question after this webinar, all you have to do is message us. Go to our website, message us. I will answer the question. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's my personal Instagram right there. Literally, it's me. You could send me a direct message on Instagram. I will respond to you. That's me. You're going to see pictures of my kids and my wife and my seminars and stuff, but that's my personal Instagram. So know that if I don't get to your question, you can easily reach out to us, and I'm happy to answer your questions. All right. Go to the website, by the way, scottluna.com. My last name's spelled really weird. It's Dutch. So Leune, scottluna.com. And that's how you can see everything I do. That's also how you can reach out to us. All right. So how do you calculate hygiene bonuses when you have an in-house membership plan? We don't have hygiene bonuses. We have a hybrid compensation structure where hygienists get a very good hourly wage. And if they produce enough, they also get an additional commission. The production is adjusted production. So if it's an in-house membership plan, maybe the production on the pro fee was 0. Then it's 0. Or maybe it was a UCR patient, it was a high number. Or maybe it was in a PPO patient, it was a middle number. But we calculate their production. So they're not getting production credit on in-house membership plans. That's okay. We've already accounted for that in all of our calculations. Their commission structure already accounts for that. But they are going to get an hourly wage to be a hygienist in our practice and to treat all the patients we accept. And if their adjusted production goes above a certain amount, they also start earning a commission on top of that. Okay, next question I see. How do you keep staff members motivated to perform at a higher level when they don't have the same drive as a dentist? Oh, you don't. You don't keep them motivated to perform at a high level. What you do is you have kind of the practice protocols results in a high amount of performance. So an example of that is when you present finances, do you print the treatment plan out of Dentrix or do you use a different style form? That's a policy you decide. Our policy is to use a different style form. That form gets higher results, no matter who the employee is. As much as possible, you change the practice management decisions to generate higher performance, no matter who the employee is. Now, in addition to that, we have to have accountability. So we're not trying to get driven people. We're just trying to get people to do the job well. See, so many of you don't have accountability. So your solution is to try to find really good people and try to keep them motivated. You could just find people to do the job with accountability. They don't have to be super driven or super motivated. They're just doing the job that they're supposed to do. There's a way to hold them accountable for that. That's a multi-hour course right there. But with accountability, which comes with auditing and communication, they do the job. And then you align them financially where there is a bonus system for the office. So in the moments of gray, they stretch and do the right thing. So like a hygienist who's running behind, patient shows up late, don't have a lot of treatment, don't have a lot of time. You need to do a pro fee and they also need sealants and fluoride. You don't have a lot of time. That's a gray area. Are you going to do everything because you're already running behind? They showed up late. You don't have a lot of time. If the hygienist is incentivized with a bonus plan, then that hygienist might step on the gas, even though it's really difficult. They may just do everything right then and there because it's best for the patient, it's best for practice. There's no bonus plan. They may not step on the gas in that moment. They may say, I don't have time to do everything, reappoint the patient. That's different. So I need them to do their job well. That's accountability and training and auditing. But then in the gray area, I want them to push hard when we really need it. And that's what a bonus plan is for. And I don't know where to find great people. Greatpeople.com. Don't know where that, I don't know the website to find great people. But what you do is you have policies that are intelligent and you have accountability to those policies. And then decent people become great. Okay. Next set of questions here. Oh gosh. Let me scroll down here a bit. There's a lot of questions I'm seeing. Okay. All right. Is the non-clinical model doable from a distance? Let's say 5 hours away from the practice. Okay. So can you own an organization where you're not picking up a handpiece and you live 5 hours away? Absolutely. Absolutely. What's going to happen though is you're going to need kind of an added layer of cost of a regional manager kind of position, someone that is going to perform the audits for you, someone that's going to be having the meetings for you. You're still going to be incentivized as an owner to have some face time, but by no means do you have to be there all the time or every week. That's actually what I did. I had 7 practices. I lived 5.5 hours away and I only had an hour meeting a week and that's all I worked. But I invested in kind of people doing what I would have done. So that is the regional manager position. And that is the person you're managing from afar. You can manage that person from afar. You're still working. It's not like you're just on a beach 5 days a week. You're still working, but that person is doing the on-site FaceTime stuff that you would normally do. What is a common hybrid compensation model? I don't have time to go into that deeply, Chris, right now, because we're almost out of time with this webinar and I got kids. I got 5 kids and I'm going to go kiss goodnight here in a minute. But the hybrid compensation model says basically this: we're going to pay hygienists a very high hourly wage, which, geez, don't we already all do that? We're going to pay them a high hourly wage. And then we're going to calculate a weekly production goal based on that wage. They need to be producing about 3.5 times their wage. So we're going to have this production goal based on their wage. And if they produce more than that goal, then we are going to give them a commission. We're going to give them 15% of the overage if they go above and beyond that goal. So it's a hybrid compensation because they have this good guaranteed base pay no matter what every other hygienist has. But then they also have a commission. So it's a hybrid of the two. They can earn a commission if they produce enough. And that's why we call it the hybrid compensation. Shelly, thank you for saying that. That's so awesome. If you've never seen Dr. Luna in person, you should do it. Thank you so much, Shelly. I've really kind of made it. I'm sure those of y'all that have seen me or know us, I've kind of made it my passion, my life passion, my career, focus to teach these types of things in a big way to private dentists. So I love it. I don't get to follow every dentist that I teach. So it's awesome to hear from dentists every now and then. So thank you for saying that. Next thing, what clinical CE courses are the best bang for your buck? Oh, Thomas. All right. Clinical courses. So when I think of that, I think of, okay, what has high case acceptance, high dollar amounts that a lot of people need? High case acceptance, high dollar amounts that a lot of people need. That's ortho, implants, sleep apnea, and facial aesthetics. Ortho, implants, sleep apnea, and facial aesthetics. Now, there's a lot of places to learn ortho. I can't give you any specific places. I apologize, but there's just a lot and it keeps changing. Ortho, not just aligner therapy, but bracketed ortho. Bracketed ortho is a lot more straightforward than you'd think for the majority of the patient base. You should definitely dabble into bracketed ortho training if you've already started doing aligner therapy. Implants, this might sound crazy, but there is a really cool place to go for intense training in surgeries and implants. You'll go here and in one extended weekend, you will place 20 to 30 implants on live patients. You'll do 2 full arches on live patients with only 2 student doctors per patient with 2 instructors watching you in a super modern facility. Write this down. Live Patient Dubai. Live Patient Dubai. Yes, it's in Dubai. what a cool experience that is, just to fly there and to see Dubai. But I don't know of anywhere else in the world where you will get so much confidence in such a short amount of time and so much attention and hands-on experiences as live patient Dubai. So that's where I would go for surgical training. There's several places to go for facial aesthetics. I know that there's a facial aesthetics company that we buy products from called ND Med, ENDY Med. But facial aesthetics is highly profitable. It's fun. You've got a whole practice full of patients that are already, some of them are already getting it or wanting it. And then sleep apnea therapy would be the last one. I can't give you any specific places to go for that right now. But those 4 things most people need or want. They're high dollar. You're going to get decent case acceptance on that. Those would be great things to add to your repertoire if you're looking to add stuff. All right. I am done with questions and I need to kiss my babies. Good night. If any of this is speaking to you, if you're sitting here and you're like, this makes sense, or this is what I want, or like I'm aligned in this, I need help, then please come to my event. You know, you'll save a lot of money by using this code tonight. Please come to my event. I don't know how else to say it, but you are going to be so thankful you did. This particular event is probably the best thing I've ever done in my career. The highest quality thing I've ever done is this particular event. I know it takes a leap of faith to like invest and go to some event like this, but this is actually the one you're supposed to go to. So if what I'm speaking about like makes sense to you, let this be the moment that says, you know what, I'm ready to start the next thing. For the rest of y'all that have already been to my events or this isn't speaking to you, I still hope this was helpful, at least to get you thinking differently, maybe to make a strong decision about your career or your practice. I hope though that there was someone on this call that this became something that falls on your career timeline and you look back and you say, you know what, it all started with that little webinar at night with Scott. That's when I started this new journey. I hope that someone has that moment. That would be incredible. All right. So I'm going to go now. By the way, as soon as I log off, there's a few more things that you'll see that might be helpful to you and ways to get in contact with us. And please, if you want to go to an event, use this code before the end of tonight and you'll save the money. It'll pay for your flight and hotel or so. And I'll see you at an event. And I'm just telling you right now, it's not a normal dental event. Like this is not bullshit. Excuse my language, but this is the real thing. You will see it's drinking from a fire hose. It's very innovative. All right. I'm out of here. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Bye-bye, everyone.